Story 1. I no longer live in perpetual dread of phrases like, "Let me tell you something," or "You know what your problem is?" Anytime she started slurring something along those lines, I knew I was in for an hours-long boozed-up, semi-coherent lecture about how messed up I was and needed to get my act together. Anybody who has been in a relationship or lived with an alcoholic knows what I'm talking about. They get wasted, then start projecting all of their own fears, anxieties, and failures on you. If you don't just sit there and take it, they become abusive and violent. I do not miss being projected at from 11 p.m. to 4 a.m. by some drunken idiot who thinks she's being profound but is really just spewing a non-stop stream of semi-coherent insults mixed in with her own insecurities. That's really the worst part too, that look of absolute authority and confidence on their face while they force you to put up with just the most absurd mumbled nonsense under threat of the conversation devolving into a screaming match. Story 2. I'm recently out of a relationship with an alcoholic girl. When she was sober, she was a great friend, and we rarely had any disagreements. When she drank, she was a completely different person. She became a lot more aggressive and confrontational about the most trivial things. She would text me, accusing me of things like not supporting her or thinking poorly of her. When she was drunk, she had an alter ego she called Lola, and no matter what I said or did, I was the problem. She would black out fairly often and tell me things like she was in love with me and that she was afraid to die but wanted to commit suicide. When I asked her about it when she was sober, she'd get even more aggressive towards me. I've talked with her about getting help or at least talking to someone, but she would just stop talking to me for a few days. Her siblings both have addiction issues and are currently facing legal troubles, so I'm glad I got out. I feel like she took advantage of my feelings towards her so she could get what she wanted. Story 3. Meeting the first woman was nice. She was fun and knew every bartender at all the local places. I just assumed she was social. Turns out she was just a very good customer. I found out later that sometimes a staff member would drive her home because her friends would leave her there. We had a lot of fights when she was sober, and she was vicious when drunk. After the breakup, I was scared to move on. I didn't know what kind of problems a new person would pose. Then I met a woman who is now my fiancée. I'd met her at a singles event, the only one I've ever gone to, and for most of it, I felt it was a waste. She saw my name tag and started talking about her uncle who shared my name. But the first thing I noticed was a beer in her hand. Major flashbacks. But when I proposed a date and named a bar we could meet at, she said that she'd prefer something fun. You need to understand how crazy that was for me. All we had ever done was bars. So this new person took me to an escape room place, and we were terrible but had so much fun. I haven't been to a bar in almost 6 months, and I'm in a place where I feel more active, alive, and just plain happy. Story 4. I don't have to avoid talking about her drinking. I don't have to beg for a sober night. I'm not always the driver now. We can go out without me planning how far a walk to the car will be when she's plastered. I don't get drunkenly yelled at on the drive home. Story 5. Not an ex, but my first stepmother was a really heavy drinker. One thing I remember really noticing was that we suddenly always had food and groceries in the house after my father divorced and got with his current wife. It eventually clicked when I realized that she used to prioritize shopping for booze first, a case of wine, enough vodka and juice for the whole week, etc., that she'd forget we were out of milk or we were low on eggs or that brie really only works as a charcuterie accent and isn't a replacement for cheddar for cheese sandwiches. Story 6. I didn't realize how much trauma and how much I had learned to live with until I got out. I can remember being very concerned with how much they were drinking because there was always a line where suddenly they completely changed, even the look in their eyes, and I just knew it was coming for me. I was deep in a cycle of abuse stemming from his drinking that it wasn't until I started spending time with people who didn't snap on me that I realized a normal, healthy partner shouldn't be throwing things, hitting things, or screaming at you, drunk or otherwise. It's been a relief, but also a little hard unlearning all my defense mechanisms. And if you're ever in that place, male or female, please leave and please realize they need help. And if they don't see it themselves, they are never going to change. You're not someone's emotional dumping ground. You're supposed to be their partner. Story 7. A lot less concern over the girlfriend getting too drunk and trying to make out with the closest warm body. Sex isn't dependent on proximity to a blackout state. Not having to play the parent every night and manage my own intake with the expectation that I will eventually have to be the semi-sober one capable of carrying her back to the car or Uber and into the house or apartment. Not having to apologize to the neighbors the next morning. Cleaning up after a night out. No longer getting strange inquiries about whether we are in an open relationship or if I'm just super secure with the fact that my girlfriend's arms are around that guy at the bar. Fewer things getting broken. So much more stability. Story 8. Generally, my current girlfriend is just better company. My ex seemed to have a need to always be showing off. People hate that. I think it was the source of her unhappiness, never being able to be satisfied. There is less toxicity, anger, and abuse. Not to mention, having money to do things is nice. I don't feel like I need to be walking on eggshells and am able to be my goofy self. Story 9. I suspect my ex would have been an alcoholic. I try to rationalize that she was 18. Freedom was new to her and we had just broken up. But I was still on the receiving end of all this. So many irrational and confusing conversations. I didn't fully understand she was drunk until I was 21. Story 10. Alcohol in our house now lasts forever. With my ex, I would buy a bottle of wine for cooking, and he would drink the whole thing before I could even make the dish. If I didn't finish a glass of wine, he would wake up in the morning and drink it off the nightstand at 8 a.m. I'd pick up a six-pack of my favorite beer for the weekend, and he would drink all of it before Wednesday. He also drank a lot in secret. We went to Las Vegas and bought a bottle of liquor to make our own drinks. The first night, we got pretty drunk. But somehow, despite the fact that we were openly drinking together, he also drank half the bottle in secret. And then the arguing. He was so offended that I could accuse him of something like that, despite the fact that he did it all the time. When I first started dating my current boyfriend, we bought a bottle of rum to share on the beach. We ended up not finishing it and having the bottle for a while, and I marked a line on the label so I could see how much he was drinking behind my back. It was so normal for my ex to do it, and then either get drunk and become horrible or get found out and start a screaming argument about how it couldn't possibly have been him. It took me more than a year before I could fully trust that my boyfriend would just drink it in front of me or answer honestly when questioned. Story 11. She wasn't an alcoholic, but there were signs. She needed alcohol to have a good time and always ordered a drink, regardless of where we were. I'd have to cut her off because she couldn't handle her alcohol. She had a substance abuse problem. She told me she quit, but she started lying to me about it. She became very defensive and aggressive when I confronted her. She had her cocaine and alcohol-using friends that she'd always go out with. I'm single now, but compared to my non-alcoholic girlfriends, she was such a handful, never mind expensive. Story 12. Not an ex, but my current significant other and I have both been going through a post-alcohol transformation. We were both pretty heavy drinkers. We decided to try January on a whim, and now we've decided to simply drink less because everything is better. The biggest change for both of us has been less fighting. Our communication suffered when we drank, particularly her because she tends to bottle things up, but I lose my ability to be diplomatic too. Story 13. Not being yelled at for never wanting to have fun. Not getting punched outside of a bar because it's 2 a.m. and you are ready to go home. Not having to buy 2 bottles of wine every day for her on top of the alcohol we had at home. Not feeling like death every morning because she forced you to drink with her every night. Not being manipulated into being the bad guy because you brought up that she needs to cut back on drinking. Not having to explain to my family why they've never seen her without a drink in her hand. Not having to stop at liquor stores before any event because she always had to drink before and on the way. Not feeling sad because you don't know who you actually fell in love with. Not questioning yourself every day. Feeling like you're going crazy because she normalizes her drinking and you don't know what's healthy and unhealthy anymore. Story 14. Before, I used to drink to keep up with her. Now, I have 2 beers to my wife's 1, and I think, I better slow down. And my recycling container isn't nearly as full, and it's not as loud when I dump it. Story 15. I don't get physically abused anymore. She was the most loving person when sober, and I loved her dearly. But for some reason, when she drank, she thought it was okay to slap me in the face and throw things at me, and let's not forget the name-calling and emotional abuse. I am 8 inches taller and 100 pounds heavier. I easily could have defended myself, but that would make me no better than her. I usually just took out my phone and recorded the abuse. The last time I called the police on her. I ended up leaving her 6 weeks before the wedding. One of the best and yet hardest decisions I've ever had to make. Story 16. They don't become a new, much meaner person when they drink, and they are a lot more, grounded. Yeah. I feel like someone cares about me and isn't trying to manipulate me. Story 17. Well, I'm actually the alcoholic in our relationship. My boyfriend often comments that I mostly get depressed and suicidal when I'm drunk, and that my drinking is the main cause of my adulthood problems. To be fair, I know all of this, but naturally it's hard to stop drinking when you're, addicted. I'm still trying, though. Today is 8 days without a drink. Story 18. My ex became a black void of depressive anger when she drank. I take being single over that any day. I believe in reconciliation and forgiveness, and I hoped and still hope that she gets help for it. But I'm pretty sure she's going to have to fall hard before she figures it out. Basically, it's the difference between someone who is forward-looking with you in their life versus someone who chooses a bottle of vodka and ruminating in their miserable past. You become a thing to fill in with their past misery. Thoughts and things that aren't even real anymore are more important to them than being present within life. It's the closest to being dead without actually being dead, apathy and nihilism. The worst part is, who does that to someone they say they love? Story 19. Life is a roller coaster with an alcoholic. There is not a lot of consistency and sometimes only 2 hours and half a dozen drinks between them thinking the world of you and calling you a piece of shit. Life is just a lot more fun, settled, and relaxing when you're with someone who does not have problems with alcohol. Story 20. Not having to stay up all night with a girl who just split her face open by falling in the bathroom because she got drunk at another work meeting. I get home to a trail of blood leading all around the house and what looks like a murder scene in the bathroom, only to find her curled up with a towel on her face in my bed, covered with gashes all over her face. Once she started, she just couldn't stop. Story 21. My friend was an alcoholic, but now she attends Alcoholics Anonymous. She is 100 times happier. She seems to be consistently growing and gaining confidence, as well as caring more about others. I would rate this experience 9.75 out of 10 and would recommend it. Story 22. Substantially less tension and anxiety. You never know where you stand with an alcoholic, which in turn causes tension and anxiety. Also, much more trust. Story 23. Not my experience, but this happened to my friend. His ex-girlfriend was a marijuana user and a pill abuser. After a freak accident they ended up splitting. He got with a nice girl who was his high school classmate. Ever since then, he lost a lot of weight, made friends, got a job, and doesn't drink anymore. Story 24. Damn, this is a list. Communication is a lot easier. Anytime a tough discussion needed to happen, my ex would buy a bottle and go into full distraction mode. So many things that could have been handled easily got left until they were relationship shattering because of this. My current partner talks and shares with me whenever either of us has a problem. I dreaded discussions before, but this is easily the best part about dating someone without substance abuse issues. Sex. Ever been with someone that needed to drink to get in the mood? That's a mood killer for the non-alcoholic. I don't have to power through the smell of unwashed and steel reserve when intimate moments happen. Not to mention the self-esteem issues that come with your partner only wanting to be touched when she's got a buzz on. Social interaction as a couple is totally different now too. It's been 6 years since I've had to make an apology to my friends for someone else's behavior. I still have a minor aversion to social situations because of this, but I'm slowly adjusting, and it's incredible to be able to not dread the office Christmas party or a New Year's Eve gathering. Emotional, physical, and psychological abuse. This one still hurts. There were a lot of occasions where a blind drunken rage would be elicited by simply helping my ex. It leaves a lasting impact on your willingness to help anyone. I once had to pick up my ex off the floor of the bar she tended because the owner would have fired her if she was found in that state. The kitchen crew literally helped me load her onto a keg cart to get her to my truck while the barback handled her closing duties. After being verbally abused the whole drive home, I had to carry her into the house so she wouldn't freeze overnight in the truck. My reward for getting her home safe and tucked into bed was getting kicked so hard in my knee that my ski season was over in January. I can't count how many times she started a verbal altercation over my concern for her well-being. Honestly, I didn't want this to become a gripe session, but sometimes you need to lay things out for contrast. My current partner and I get drunk once in a while, and she never gets abusive when I suggest we stop drinking. This took serious getting used to, and I'm finally at a point where I enjoy having a couple of drinks with her. It's one of the best feelings to feel safe and warm when you both shuck off the day and get a little loose together. Last, I'm no longer watching a person I care so deeply for fall apart and destroy herself slowly. I used to see the bottles and cans come out, and it put me in a sad, helpless place where I remembered the vibrant, intelligent, happy, and beautiful woman I married instead of the fading two-time college dropout who's drinking herself to death and is content to be an underachiever. I really don't need to compare my partner to my ex on this point. At the risk of generalizing, she's just a normal person with goals and dreams who takes care of herself. All of these things were alien when I first started dating her, and it goes to show that having a relationship with someone who has substance abuse issues can take its toll on you to the point where you lose track of who you are and your role in the relationship. So the real difference that I see is that I'm allowed to be a partner again instead of a caretaker. Edit. If you're going through this, please do yourself the favor of getting some help to find a better perspective. I went to a few Alcoholics Anonymous family group meetings, and it really did give me the strength to step back and look at my situation.